ALS, you guys know what ALS is? Okay, I have 3 doctors in ALS dying in my hospice side of my practice. We are not good patients. Doctors are very bad patients. Almost as bad as nurses. Okay, just to point that out to the nurses in the country. Okay, almost. But these guys got the program now where they look at a keyboard on the screen, it spells a letter, they make a sentence, they can't touch the keyboard, they can't, and when I come in the room they go, "Hi Don, how are you today?" The computer's talking to me, they can't. It's just absolutely wonderful with our mind. You know, the brain is an untouched reservoir. So we're back to an adult who has a pain problem, and that's a specific area in the brain. So that is out of sync. So we constantly have them do a task to bring that wave up to where the body wants it. They lock in, and all of a sudden their craving is down. It doesn't happen immediately, because those frequencies get lots of stim, but once the brain is locked long enough, it stays there. You get a head trauma, you get put on a pain medication, you have an incredibly stressful moment, like losing a spouse or something, you're back in therapy because that area will go fluid again. It's just like adjusting insulin if you have a stressful moment. Correct? Except there are no side effects. Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
Dr. Adema, what about the with migraine, headache?
Yes, absolutely. Very powerful in headaches.
I got my son who was suffering for that.
Yeah.
You know, it's an energy, what is this?
It's a brain wave, and his pain center is out of sync.
It could be helped like
It
that?
could be helped a lot.
Oh my goodness, how am I going to tell him?
Good. Here shows an actual application with a migraine.
Any conversation about neurofeedback has to begin with a look at the brain. The brain is really an information engine. It's really oriented toward processing lots and lots of information at the same time. And in fact, the brain is rather self-absorbed. Most of what goes on in the brain is the brain talking to itself about itself. One key aspect of brain function is that neurons don't act alone. We've got 10 billion neurons up there in our glorious cortex. And if one of them does or doesn't do its thing, that can't really matter. If it can't matter, we can't suddenly have an automobile accident because some single neuron is acting up. So when we're looking at the EEG, for example, we're looking at those bunches of neurons performing in groups. The EEG is composed of a range of frequencies, all the way from 0 to more than 100 hertz, and the brain cares about each one. Without specially designed tools,
Isn't that nice verbiage? It cares about each
generate
one.
more or less of these specific frequencies, and that has implications for brain function.
We like to think of neurofeedback really as a brain exercise, and specifically we're exercising the brain's ability to self-regulate.
The headroom that we have available for better function through brain training is much larger than the headroom we have available through physical exercise.
This allows you to wake up better, fall asleep better, pay attention better, calm down better, all of those state management issues that underlie good function. There's certain basic ways that the brain can fail to self-regulate appropriately. A person could be stuck in high arousal, have difficulty calming down, falling asleep. Could be stuck in low arousal, have difficulty waking up and being motivated. Also, the brain could just spiral out of its own control into a symptom like a migraine, a panic attack, or a seizure.
At my worst, I was having a pretty major migraine several times a month that would last generally 3 days and sometimes would last longer, like 5 days. But I had headaches really every day, and I was taking medication throughout the day to try to control the headaches so they wouldn't become worse. And I was really at the point where they said the next step for me would be a preventative one. And then I would probably have to take this medication that causes you to drop words in the middle of your sentences, and it really affects your speech patterns, and it's scary.
Neurofeedback can be helpful with a wide variety of people, different ages, from very young children through adults, through old age, through people with very severe conditions, to people who want to improve their performance, who are already functioning quite well.
Recently, my mother suggested that I talk to a friend of hers who had done neurofeedback and had had great success. You know, I definitely feel that my stress level is so much lower now than it was.
She's putting them in very specific parts of the
head. Where do we
head.
put the electrodes and what frequencies do we reward, which turns out to be enormously specific from individual to individual.
I basically go in and I watch a monitor, and they teach my brain to stay in this certain range of levels.
Within the first session and from session to session, we need to dial in what is the most comfortable and effective reward frequency, how much do we need to get a person more calm or more activated. Once we have that worked out, then we can think in terms of placement, and we can get quite specific in terms of which brain functions we want to target by where we put the electrodes on the head. Neurofeedback session starts with putting electrodes on the head to measure the brain waves. Nothing goes into the brain, but we're measuring what the brain is already doing. And then we use those brain waves to drive the video game, which is the feedback to the client. For example, with inner tube, when the brain is achieving the goals that we set, then the rocket ship accelerates.
That's what you're watching.
Makes more exhaust, which is a reward.
That's
if
the
the brain
task
goes off in the
or
wrong
the game.
direction, then a black fog comes in and obscures the tunnel.
And it's that, the push on our part and the push back on the part of the brain that affects
It's like PT.
the gradual learning process by which the brain learns to behave better.
From day one of my sessions in neurofeedback, my headaches have started to decrease. And it started to happen right away.
Pretty dramatic, huh?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just taking something we've used for 50 years. These brain mappings, these ways were mapped out in the roaring 20s and immediately discredited and put to the side when the pharmaceutical agents became king and the only standard of care. Well, that era is over. Do you realize that that era of medicine will be just a blip in the history of medicine? And that it has its place and we can use it, but it's not the end all. So we're bringing back stuff that actually is healthier for the patient and with a little long-term benefit as opposed to constant medical adjustment. Any questions?
Would you please comment on homeopathy?
Homeopathy is another way of utilizing what God gave us. It has special, they use special areas of nature, and it's very good. Naturopaths, homeopathy, nutraceuticals, all those are looking into the environment. Okay. Good enough.
Small amounts.
Small amounts.
Small amounts.
Just to encourage, just to support, just to initiate. What we all learn in our first day of med school is the philosophy of medicine, and one of the basic premises we must learn is that the body has the inherent ability to heal itself. You just have to give it the right stuff. Okay, and that means eating. And that's a perfect segue into what's going to be next.
I have
Yes.
one other question before you go. They're saying there's a test that you can have to see if you have a certain protein that you can have. Like at my age, I'm 53, to see if I have that protein for Alzheimer's, would it be worth doing something like that?
It's an expense. The approach to it would be the same you would if you didn't know, if you didn't want to have dementia. And that would be having many anti-inflammatory support agents that you can do, doing something like Cognisure, make sure your brain waves are in sync, and just simply eating right. The #1 inflammatory agent is our diet, I think. Okay? 80% of your immune system is in your GI tract. That is a board question for us. We have to answer that to get our license. And how often do we remember that out of med school? Not often enough. So if you eat right, your immune system's happy, and then everything else gets better. Or certainly gets started on the path, correct?
Both my parents having Alzheimer's, what, you're taking that stuff already?
Right.
Is that something that I would consider
I
doing?
did good, yeah.
Yeah?
I have my children taking it. I just
Oh.
simply don't want that death. You know, we all have an off button. I'd like to kind of reach the off button and not encourage it early.
To correct some of the problem, what would include nutrition?
Right?
You're talking about a lot of anti-inflammatory. The inflammation goes to the brain too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so how to remove it there, and also it is bioelectronic correction.
Very good.
You know, there used to be Dr. Nadu.
Yes, that's true.
You remember?
Yes.
Did Rabin,
Oh, and they just beat him.
he died?
They beat him up as well.
Yeah, but he used to help a lot of
That's
children
right.
that way, especially with focus of the eye and all this stuff. And
That's it.
That-
You're absolutely. That was a very primitive but very efficient way of getting the brain waves in sync.
yes,
See, it's just so amazing. I'm going to tell you one story before I let them go that kind of tied it together at the convention. Afterwards, I got barraged. The topic got barraged. I kept going, I'm just the messenger. I didn't do the research. Don't beat me up. And so I had psychiatrists, neurologists. I had people just there. I mean, they were just like, don't know, yeah. And then this very annoyingly tall ER physician goes and just shoves the psychiatrist to the side of the neurologist. I'm going, dude, you're in trouble. And, you know, and he goes, I am 62. I am work in a high-powered ER. I can't remember patient names, and I have to work for 5 years. Will this work for me? And I thought, well, let's calm it down a bit. So where's your copay? No sense of humor. None. Back away from the copay. So okay, let's try. And then the psychiatrist is just like writing notes. Like, I got to get him on. It's just cute as a button, you know. And so I said, okay, no copay, but yes, this is perfect. Your brain is shrinking. And your waves are changing. How much more perfect is this? I am so glad I think God led you here today. And he just said, okay, thank you. And he turned around on his heel and, you know, walked away. Never saw him again at the convention. It was just, so it's like that old, the one sheep and the 99. Good grief, that just sealed the deal for me. That one person took it in my profession. So if that works for him, look what he'll do in the ER when mom comes the first time.
Absolutely.
Isn't that exciting?